Hello, my name is John Deedy, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local political media analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today, I am honored to talk with candidate for the Maryland State Senate from the Fighting 46th District, Bobby LaPin. Welcome aboard.
Hey, what's up, Professor John? How you doing, brother?
Doing good. Glad to be doing this. My first question is, why are you running?
Man, like my whole life, I have just seen the powerful people and the powerful corporations just basically always push back on working people. And I've always been an activist my whole life. And I'm just at the point now where instead of just sitting home and complaining, I'm trying to do something about it, trying to do something about the situation, trying to do something about affordability, our high BGE rates, trying to do something to fight back against ICE and, this rise of authoritarianism in our country. So that's what it was. I was an activist with a social media platform, now turned person who's actually trying to make the change in government.
What do you think is the number one issue in the campaign that you feel is out there that people really need to be talking about?
Well, I think people are already talking about it. I mean, it's the BGE bills. I think it's pretty obvious every single, Marylander within the BGE area, which I believe about 1.8 million get energy from BGE, 2.2 million in total, I think, when you add gas into that. And for years and years and years, there's been like this unchecked power that BG has had in relation to how much governance is actually done on top of them. I mean, it's really easy to see why we are where we are when it comes to BG rates. It's easy to see why the rates are so high. And that's simply because politicians seem to put profits over people.
An interesting thing is the money that's being given to BG&E is to do all these upgrades, things they would have already had to do. And I've often said this, when you go get your car fixed, you don't pay the mechanic till the work is done.
Well,
And
yeah, I use the same thing, John. Actually, I use the plumber analogy. So very similar analogy, right? Like, if you got a leaky pipe, you call the plumber. The plumber comes in and says, okay, this is why I think your pipe is leaky. And it's going to cost $100 to fix it. Then you, as the consumer, have the choice. Do you fix the pipe or not? And BGE is doing it in a very different way. Oh, we're just going to go ahead and do this project and then come back later and tell you what we did. It's ridiculous. No business in the world works that way. And we can see the proof is in the pudding. Last year, 2025, the year before that, 2024, they just literally have increased their profits to the point it's record-breaking profits for the 100-some years BGE has been a company.
what do you think of the proposals that have been done? They did them last year, they did them this year, where basically we're going to send some checks out to people to help deal with their bills. We're going to have a cost reduction. What do you think of this plan by Governor Moore, which Senate President Ferguson has supported?
It's a waste of taxpayer money. Look, you don't throw good money after bad. When we go ahead and say, okay, we're going to allot $100 million, to offset, the utility bills, that $100 million was paid by the taxpayers of Maryland, and then $100 million is going right to BGE. BGE still gets everything they want. They still get to make their profit. And meanwhile, that $100 million that's still going to BGE could have gone to another program like SNAP or education or whatever it may be, that now will have to be cut because the politicians want to make sure BGE's profit is covered. In the end of the day, you don't fix a problem by throwing money at it. You fix a problem by actually fixing the problem. And that's this multi-year rate plan. That's this unchecked balance or this unchecked power that they have with these supplemental programs where they don't even have to ask the PSC for permission to do them. I mean, if you look at the South Baltimore project, that's a good example. Okay. And regardless of where you people watch this, right? If you're a BGE customer, you are paying rates for everything that's happening in Maryland, even if it's in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, whatever it may be. Here's a plan to go ahead and replace aging infrastructure in South Baltimore, a plan that was first introduced in 2016 a plan that was supposed to cost about $100 million in 2016, a plan that in 2016, 10 years ago, they said is urgent. We've got to do this now. And here we are 10 years later. The thing hasn't even basically been started. And now they're coming to the community and saying, we really have to do this project, but now it's going to cost $540 million. And BGE is not even telling us why the plan is important, why the cost has increased from $100 million to $540 million. I mean, obviously, I understand inflation. I understand the cost of getting goods and technology, you know, in the world that we live in. But in the end of the day, jumping from $100 million to $540 million, doing very little community outreach to ask the community what they thought about this project. They were literally just trying to sneak it underneath the radar, and then they would have been guaranteed a 9.5% profit on that project. So, of course, if I was a for-profit company, I would want to go ahead and make as many projects as I could, as many new projects, and the more expensive I can make that project, well, the more profit I make. That's what we need to stop.
One criticism that has been levied at your opponents, Mr. Ferguson, is first, he works for a solar company, and it seems like the state loves solar. Also, he has taken money from BG&E as campaign contributions. What's your thoughts on both of those things?
Well, you probably already know my thoughts about the contributions. You know, I'm a candidate that is not taking any corporate money. I'm a candidate that's not taking any developer money. Bill Ferguson has taken tens of thousands of dollars. I believe correct me, I might be wrong in this because the numbers, I have a lot of numbers in my head, but I think it was $58,950 directly from utility companies. As Senate president, he's been taking $25,000 donations each year from BGE. In 2024, fun fact, in 2024, going back to this $500 million BGE project in South Baltimore, in 2024, the Office of People's Counsel put that on the radar of the PSC and the politicians, saying, we don't really understand this project. We don't know why it needs to be done, and we don't know why the price tag has increased so much. They released that in either November or December of 2024. In October of 2024, my opponent, Bill Ferguson, hosted a $25,000 per ticket Colorado getaway, of which the CEO of BGE attended. So he went on some news agency, I believe it was Fox Baltimore, and said, you know, just because I take $25,000 donations from BGE doesn't mean that I'm not doing the right thing by the people. But like, here's the common sense that 87% of Americans agree with. 87% of Americans agree with. If a corporation gives a politician money, that corporation is not giving the politician that money to do what's right by the people. They're giving the politician the money to do what's right by the corporation. So taking corporate money, especially when it's a monopoly like BGE, taking that money out of politics would probably be a really good start to make sure that the politicians actually do the will of the people rather than the will of the corporations. I know that was your second point. What was your first point?
Him working for a solar company and promoting solar power.
I'm a big lover of renewable energy, John. You probably have seen my platform. It is the way of the future. So many countries have proven it's the cheapest thing. The cheapest utility rates in the United States. You know what state it's in?
What?
Texas. Texas? Texas, largest oil producer, right? I think next to Alaska, Texas. But Texas has so much solar, so much wind, and they have their own grid, obviously, in Texas. Remember the snowstorms, how their grid kind of failed them. But renewable energy is free energy. You build the infrastructure, the wind blows for free, the sun shines for free, and Texans enjoy the lowest utility rates in the United States. And it's not because of burning coal. It's not because of natural gas. It's because of renewable energies. So, you know, I know a lot of people are really against Bill for working for a solar company and also being Senate president, and see that there could be, you know, some type of, you know, collusion or some type of issue between the two. But I'm a proponent of renewable energy, and I believe that if the bill or any type of law in regards to renewable energy is good for the people, then it's good for the people. So I don't know if there is a problem with that. I know a lot of people have cited that, but me as a proponent and a lover of renewable energy, since it would lower our costs significantly in this state, I don't know. I don't really know how I haven't done a deep dive on that part of his background. I've just done the deep dive on his BGE relationship.
I've always felt solar is an important tool as far as in the entire situation, as far as energy, to try to find ways to lower costs. And, the sun is free.
It's free, exactly. And the wind is free too. Look, right now, so PJM, to understand the power thing, like people have to come to my TED talk about how energy works, because we've got to have a foundation of knowledge on how the grid works. But we're in the PJM interconnection grid, which is about 13 states. What is 13 states? Maryland's one of them. In this grid, in this 13 state grid, we have over 200 gigawatts of renewable energy waiting to be plugged in. To put that in perspective, 200 gigawatts of energy would literally power the entire grid. Free sun, free wind. But it's caught in this ancient type of process that PJM has to approve energy from being connected in. So we have wind farms and solar farms that are just sitting there, not plugged into the grid, while we're bickering and complaining on keeping coal-burning power plants open and building new natural gas power plants, when all we have to do is basically plug in this renewable energy, of which, ladies and gentlemen, the sun and the wind are free. It would dramatically lower our utility bills. Dramatically lower our utility bills. But of course, BG doesn't make a profit doing that. And if BG doesn't make a profit, politicians don't get their campaign contributions.
That is true. My next question centers on an issue that's come up a lot in Annapolis recently, and that is over basically empowering the inspector generals in the state of Maryland to do their job. Currently, the state doesn't have an inspector general as far as for basically preventing waste, fraud, and abuse. Isabel Cumming in Baltimore City is trying to do a lot of investigations into waste, fraud, and abuse in Baltimore City, and Mayor Scott has shut her down. There is legislation before the legislature that currently is stuck in the Rules Committee, and
Right.
Bill Ferguson can let it out today or tomorrow if he wanted to. How do you feel about this whole inspector general situation?
This is another common sense thing. Look, this is what's funny, John. There's so much that you don't even have to have a background in political science or anything to understand what makes sense. If I give $1 to someone and that person says, I'm going to spend this dollar on an apple, if that person goes out and spends it on an orange, but I gave them $1 to buy an apple, and I have no one to make sure they use that dollar to buy an apple, well, who's at fault? The person who wrongly spent the money, or me not making sure I'm making sure as the politician the money is spent correctly? People ask me all the time with my very progressive platform. I'm a big proponent of renewable energy. I'm a big supporter of the blueprint for Maryland's future, of teachers. I mean, education is so important. People are like, well, how are you going to pay for all this? We live in the richest state, in the richest country in human history. The money is there. It is, because we pay the taxes and see how much of the money is there. The real problem is, how is it being spent? The choices we make in spending that money. And if we continue to have a school system lose $12 million here, or another local government spend tens of thousands of dollars on a credit card that they should not have spent that money on, and if we have no inspector general or audit system to make sure that this dollar for an apple is being spent correctly, we're hurting working people. People are out there working so hard to pay their bills right now. And on top of that, they pay taxes. And here's the thing about taxes. No one would ever complain about how much money they're paying in taxes if they got something back for it. But when you feel like you're paying taxes and you have no return on your investment, of course, we're going to complain. So when people ask me, where's the money? And should we have inspector generals? And should we have audits on everything that we're spending? Absolutely. It makes sense that we have to audit where the taxpayers' money is going to.
Next
Sorry,
question.
I'm really big into that because like I just don't understand what the argument is over it. It's a common sense argument.
I've always looked at that argument and I agree. I think that it would be a good idea. I always feel that when people oppose offices like this, and you could comment on this, that they're trying to hide something. Invest it. No one, politicians love investigations until they're being investigated. And a lot of the inspector general stuff in Baltimore City relates to stuff Isabel Cumming is doing,
Mm-hmm.
maybe getting a little too close on the Monzi situation. Uh, I think there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of speculation on what's happening and why the Senate president is kind of, you know, decapitating Isabel Cumming.
And there shouldn't be speculation. These are public servants who are elected by the people to represent them, right? They're spending public money, money that I work hard for, that you work hard for, John, that plumbers and electricians and the mechanic you talked about earlier work hard for and paying taxes. This is public stuff. There should be no speculation. There should be no cover up. There should be no redacted documents. The people deserve to know. The people deserve to have access to the information so the people can make wise, educated, you know, uh, choices and decisions on what is happening in government. And what really pushes distrust of politicians and distrust of the government in general is when people feel like they're being lied to. And regardless of if they're being lied to or not, if you deliver to an inspector general whose job is literally to audit and to make sure the people's money is being spent wisely, if you deliver a document to the IG that is grossly redacted with black lines, or you're not giving information to the IG, whether you're lying or not, it comes across to the average person that you're trying to hide something, like you said, John. And I agree with you. And that's wrong to do to working people because, again, these people work for us. That state house in Annapolis is owned by the people. The city hall in Baltimore is owned by the people. These are our buildings. These are people that work for us, these politicians, and they're spending our money. The people deserve to have an advocate that protects the money that hardworking people give to the government.
Next question centers
Sure.
on something that I always ask people about this. Who would you consider past or current political leaders that you look at as kind of a North Star? People that you admire, that you'd love to be able to walk in their footsteps, or people that when they write something or you see something about them, you're diving in and reading?
Um, well, I think it's obvious if you hear my message, but there are two people I I adore when it comes to politicians. And that's Barbara Mikulski and Bernie Sanders. These two people have stood up and fought such great challenges in life. I think of Barbara Mikulski, how she started off as just a social worker in Baltimore, fighting a highway that would have completely destroyed Federal Hill and Fells Point. You know, I don't even know how tall she is. What is she, like 4'9", 5'1"? John, do you know how tall is she? John, do you know?
I think she's in the 4 foot category.
I mean, look, she comes out like a firecracker, this little social worker, the daughter of immigrants from Poland who are fighting for other children of immigrants in forgotten neighborhoods at that time, Fells Point and Federal Hill. And literally, because the people rose up, the power of the people rose up, it stopped that highway from happening. And look at Fells Point and the beauty of Federal Hill today. Then I look at Bernie Sanders. Here's a guy who has always been the same person since when he first ran for mayor, power to the people, not taking corporate money, everything we're talking about right now. It's a person who has always stuck to his guns. And at such an older age, such an experienced, politician, as a U.S. senator, when he made both his runs for president, the amount of togetherness he created in this country from groups from the young to the old, from workers to firefighters to everybody, was so inspiring. Bernie Sanders, I believe, as far as I can remember, I believe it was the first candidate I ever gave a political donation to. Bernie Sanders is the first politician, from what I can remember, that I literally quit my job for a little bit, took a pause from my job. I took money out of my bank account and I drove across this country and campaigned for him in Iowa and Nevada to become president, because I have this radical hope myself that I believe in a country one day where the will of the people will actually be done and not the will of the corporations. Can I share a personal story with you, John?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm actually in my feels a lot today. We have 1 week left of the General Assembly, and I feel like this campaign, which is backed by so many thousands of people, not a cent of corporate money. We have dozens of people every Saturday that help me go door to door. I talked to a woman the other day. I'm actually getting choked up about this. I talked to a woman the other day. I was the keynote speaker at the No Kings rally about a week ago, and she heard my speech about butterflies and the power of, this old feeling in the natural world that when a butterfly flaps its wings, it can cause a great storm on the other side of the world, right? And basically my speech was about, although sometimes as an individual we feel alone, you just have to look to the left and the right of you and see that there's other individuals who feel the same way. You're not alone. We're all in this together. And she gave me a hug and she cried and she said to me, you just give so much hope to people in such dark times. But the thing is, it's not about me. I mean, those are also individual butterflies that are giving me hope as well. It's the reason why I chose to run, so we could do this together and finally have a voice. When I was a kid, there was this vacant lot in my neighborhood that had a couple of trees. We call it the woods, but it might have been like 3 or 4 trees in this vacant lot. And me and my friends, we would play, soldier in this vacant lot. And I remember that we would argue over who got to be the good guy, right? And the good guy was always America. And the bad guy was whomever, right? Because we were children and we believed in equality and justice, and we believed America stood for all these good things. We believed that there was an American dream. We believed that if you work hard in this country, you're respected, you have dignity, and you can buy a house and raise a family. We believed all these things as children. But then as I grew up and got older, when I joined the army myself, the actual army, saw the world a bit, I started to realize that America that I saw as a child, that the American dream, that was the dream, that kind of America actually existed. And it doesn't. All across this country, there are so many young people who are still living with their parents, not because they have a failure to launch or because, they're lazy or whatever. They have college degrees. 15% of recent college graduates can't find a job. When they do find a job, AI is replacing their job so quickly that they can't even find an entry-level job. How are they supposed to buy a house and raise a family? So in the end of the day, I believe in this American dream and have radical hope that we can find that dream together and actually make it a reality. And that means regulating BG&E. That means holding big corporations accountable, making sure that data centers pay their fair share, making sure that data centers don't destroy our neighborhoods or take all of our drinking water or raise our BGE rates. It also means protecting our immigrant neighbors from ICE and authoritarian overreach. It means making sure that when a working person goes to work and pays their taxes, that working person knows that that money is not being squandered as some sort of handout to a corporation, but being spent on the very working people it's meant to protect and help.
One question I want to ask about, and I've seen a lot of your stuff on Instagram and some of the messages you've given out, and you talked about one recently, and it relates to ICE and the Community Trust Act. I'd like you to talk
Yes.
about that and your thoughts on it and the role Senator Ferguson is having in this as far as everything.
What's interesting, so if people don't understand the Community Trust Act, real quick for any listener here, the bottom line is this is what it does. It ensures that every person in Maryland has due process under the Maryland and US Constitution. That due process means that if you've committed a crime, you go through the same process, the same legal process as everyone else in this state. Right now, if a police officer believes that you may be here undocumented, they can unofficially hold you for up to 48 hours to turn you over to ICE. That's not the country that we live in, though. That's not America when someone doesn't have due process. And here's who this impacts. This impacts over 1 million Marylanders, over 1 million immigrants in the state. Both Bill and I took an oath. I, as a soldier, took an oath to always defend the US Constitution. Bill took an oath when he entered the state Senate to always uphold the state and the US Constitution. If we are not passing bills that protect the fundamental constitutional rights of the people we serve, that is a direct violation of the oath of office we took, and it makes you ineligible to continue to serve that people. Did I answer that question?
Because I have read a lot about the Community Trust Act, and it's just very fascinating what it encompasses as far as what to do for people, especially immigrants and people accused.
Right. I mean, if you look at Baltimore's population, okay, Baltimore has had a population decline since the 1957 or 1975. I mean,
about 57. About 57.
57? Okay, so 1957 has had a population decrease until last year, where we've actually had an increase. But the majority of that increase have come from immigrants who work hard in our community. They're great members of the community. They have some of the lowest amount of like crime rates in our community. When immigrants come here, they come here to work hard, to raise a family, to get away from whatever craziness they're leaving in their home country. Most of them pay taxes, which a lot of people don't know, but it's true. Right now, there's a guy at Bayview Hospital who was rear-ended. He was an immigrant from Honduras. He was rear-ended on Eastern Avenue last week by ICE, because that's what they do now. They use taxpayer money to rent a truck, and then they take that truck and purposely run it into the back of a car to stop it. By the way, taxpayers, we're fitting the bill to rent this truck, and we're also now fitting the bill to fix this truck. Then they arrest this guy, beat him up so badly, he lands in the hospital. Now the taxpayers are going to pay that hospital bill. They have 24-hour supervision over him by a private contractor, of which the taxpayers are going to pay that bill. This guy has been in this country for 11 years, has not committed a single crime, owns his own business, and we have 9 years worth of documentation that he's paid his taxes. How many tens of thousands of dollars has it just cost the taxpayers of Maryland and the United States to go ahead and ram into this guy who's been paying taxes and not committing crimes for 9 years? It's ridiculous. How are we going to have an American dream? How are we going to be the hope of the world? How are we going to be that shining city on a hill if people in this country don't have the same equal rights under the US Constitution? What does the US Constitution even mean if we don't protect it?
The question I want to ask is this. Let's say you win and you become a state senator. What are the first couple big policy ideas you want to do?
I really want to push for public power. I know it's going to be a long fight, but 55 million Americans in this country have public power. Basically, the taxpayers own their own power. We would take over BG&E. We would get to make decisions on what projects actually need to be accomplished and what are just luxury projects, like what I believe this $500 million project in South Baltimore is, just a luxury project. We have to focus on education. Education creates opportunities. Opportunities create jobs. And there's a lot of people in this state who are bickering over how much the blueprint for Maryland's future is costing us. But here's the deal. When a business opens up a shop, they do it because they know they can have an educated workforce to work in that business. If we continue, and if you've seen test scores and progress of Maryland students, it doesn't look good. The way that we fix that is with a robust education system to encourage teachers to want to stay as teachers by making that a truly dignified profession where they're paid appropriately, for showing up to work and doing, the Lord's work in providing education to our students, which in turn provides more jobs, it lowers crime, it increases our tax base. I mean, education. When the Maryland blueprint, when the blueprint for Maryland's future got passed, one of the very first things that my opponent did was started to cut portions out of it, like this 60-40 thing. Now, I'm a former teacher right in Baltimore, and I taught at a high needs school at Walbrook High School. What this 60-40 thing does is, look, if you're a teacher in a high needs school, this is my plan for it. 60% of the time you'll spend teaching, but then you have 40% of the time to get adequate coaching as a new teacher and to have time for planning and for planning time to develop your lessons, to grade, things like that. It's very important because so many students in high need schools, which is a lot of schools across the state of Maryland, not just Baltimore, they have 45 minutes to an hour each day of planning time. And how does that give me enough time as a teacher to look at each individual student and what path I need to go down to make sure that student gets what that student needs to succeed? And then that student doesn't succeed. That student can't read because I don't have enough time in the day to go ahead and plan for it. That student goes out, drops out of school. That student commits crimes. That student becomes yet someone else that needs taxpayer money to survive. All I want to do is allow people the opportunity for the American dream. And that also includes a robust education system. And the next thing that I want to do is we need to focus on making rent, not just making rent affordable, but also making purchasing a home in Maryland more affordable for everyone. And we could start with programs. Right now, we have a program in Maryland called Smart Buy 3.0. My wife actually used it. What the program does is if you buy a house in Maryland and you went to a state university, she went to Towson, I went to Towson as well. If you live in that house for 5 years, the state will pay off your student loans. I believe now it's up to $20,000. I think when she did it, it's up to $40,000. Well, instead of just willy-nilly just allowing every Marylander to have that, why don't we focus on using that program for down payments for teachers, firefighters, police officers, for city employees, for county employees to say, look, if you sign a 5-year contract with us and you promise that you'll live in this district, you'll live in your jurisdiction and work in your jurisdiction to help people, that we'll give you a $20,000 down payment for your home. That increases the availability of folks who can afford a home. And it also increases the tax base within the city, and it makes sure firefighters live in their district, police officers live in their district, and teachers can actually afford a home in their district. Doesn't that sound like an easy, common sense idea?
Sense to me in a lot of ways. We got to get more people in the cities and more people as homeowners because homeownership helps the economy in general.
100%, 100%. You know?
I want to thank you again for your time. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and good luck on the campaign trail.
I appreciate that. Can I pitch my website, man?
You could pitch the website.
MakeGoodChange.com. And my message is this: I am not taking a cent from corporations or from developers. So if you want a voice in Annapolis that truly represents working people, I need you to dig deep, go to the website, MakeGoodChange.com, and contribute what you can. Because this is how we make good change, when we stand up together. Thanks, John.
Fantastic. Thank you.